And we were confronted with a situation where a policeman, while on duty, was shot and was in a vegetative state. His salaries and other things were trapped in his account. And we were requested, there was a request by the wife to operate the account. Now we were in a conundrum. One, there are duties that every banker owes to his customer. Confidentiality, as well as duties not to, make transactions, post debits into the account without authorization or instructions and things like that. The wife certainly is not the account holder, so she cannot give instructions which would be honored. The man was in a vegetative state, and that meant that he couldn't give instructions. So what was the way out? What do we do? Again, he wasn't dead, and he could be in that state for 5, 10 years. There would be mouths to feed, there will be bills to pay, there will be rents to pay, there will be all kinds of things that needed to be done, but they could not be done because of the state of the man. So the request came to us, and the initiative we took at that time was to advise them to approach a magistrate court, because as the way banking operates is that there is a mandate card where the clear instructions of who can sign and authorize the bank to make withdrawals is built. If there is a second person, it will all be indicated. But in this case, he was the signatory. It was his salary account. And so we advised them to go to a magistrate court. It happened here in Abuja. Sorry, to go to court. They went to a magistrate court. They got an order. After deposing to affidavits, they attached to it medical reports of the police officer, as well as confirmation letters from his office. Eventually, an order was given, and based on that order, we authorized the bank to his branch to grant access to the wife for certain sums. Was that effective? Was that the best approach? Well, at that time, perhaps it helped, but I must point out that you can see that if you look at how long it took, days, weeks, before all this was put together and a decision made, if there was a financial power of attorney in place, many things could have been done within a shorter time. Sometimes medical bills, even the life of the holder of the account might be at stake. And the luxury of going through all these processes might not be there. And from my own experience and discussions with other bankers, some have told me that the way out is to add a second signatory to one's account, so that either to sign, so that in the event that something happens, the other person can still operate the account. So there have been different suggestions. Even as a regulator now, we've had an experience, to my knowledge, where a top official of government found himself in a similar situation. In this case, the commercial bank couldn't take a decision on their own, and they escalated it to us. I know ultimately we reviewed the circumstances, and we still had to go to the route of filing affidavits and approaching the court ex parte and obtaining an order. And so right now, that is the tedious part. The order is to protect the bank in the event that there is a challenge thereto. So for now, that has been the experience, and that is the approach that many banks take, depending on their risk appetite. Thank you. Hello, Cynthia.
Okay, thank you, Martins. Right, thank you, Martins. So, gotten a bit of clarification. Thank you, Martins. Thank you for that. Martins has given us a very good illustration of when a financial power of attorney would come in handy. And that's the easier route, of course. It does away with a lot of cumbersome procedures that would otherwise be in place. So thank you very much for that. Just a reminder to those just joining us now, if you have any questions, you can drop your questions at the question and answer box. Yes, at the end of this session, all your questions and whatever issues you have will be addressed. So thank you. So moving on, thank you for joining us. These questions for you. We've heard about power of attorney, it's applicable in the banking sector, and number of sectors it can be applied. Martins has listed a number of areas where financial power of attorney will come in handy. So just give us a little insight on how it can be used as a tool for estate planning in Nigeria. Open now. Obinna, that question was for you. Did you get the question?
Okay, sorry, I didn't get the question. I was out for a moment.
Okay,
Can you please repeat?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question is, how can the financial power of attorney be used as a tool in estate administration in Nigeria? I hope you got the question.
Okay, if I got you right, is asking how can it be used as a tool for estate administration in Nigeria?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will just probably give a little bit of a story from the experience of the things I've done to explain what I want to explain. Last December, I was in Ebonyi State. To education. So it was, the project was to look at the traditions and cultures that impede the welfare of women in southeastern Nigeria, South Ebonyi State. And we had to visit various communities in the states, and we asked questions as to the welfare of women, their rights, how their rights are protected, to the protection of the rights of women. And part of the issues that we had that seems to be a very growing practice in most communities is the fact that most times the communities do not train their female children, particularly because the men. So even if a man wants to train his female child, most of the time he's impressed upon by his kinsmen not to do that. Now, tying it down to the question, we wonder, in some cases, there are men who probably were able to do this to train their female children or to take care of their wives because of the fact that they are well-to-do. So nobody actually comes to your house to yank off your finance and tell you how to spend your money or not. But it's come down to this question of where if that man cannot have the money, but doesn't have the ability to decide how the money is going to be spent, so, and there is nobody who has the ability to do that except maybe his brother or people who feel that they are close to him, so that becomes a very big problem at this time, because the immediate family of the man who has the money is suffering and there are resources to take care of them, but because probably he has just female children, or probably because he has just, they feel that the men should be taken care of more than the women, so they don't get anything. So at the end of the day, a person cannot, considering the fact that his family members have taken over. Of course, I don't know, most communities in Nigeria have this communal kind of thing, in which our brother's wealth is our wealth. word for all. In most places, I think a brother is counted, his younger brothers are counted before you count his wife and you count his children, in most places. Some men may not want to disturb that arrangement because it is tradition, so to speak. But as long as they are capable and they are valid, as long as they are strong, they would also ensure that whatever of children they have are taken care of. But we run into a situation where they are not strong and where they're not capable again to take care of their children. Of course, we know that financial power of attorney operates when the man is still alive. By the time he's dead, I think executors now have to, assuming he has a will, or probate issues now start. But you see that it's sometimes without it removes your take care of his children, to take care of his family, or the funds entering into that account to take care of them. Assuming the fund that comes into the account comes from a property that is jointly owned, but there is nothing to show that the property is jointly owned between the two spouses, except the fact that when there's an unwritten arrangement between the spouses, that when funds come in, it is used to resolve family issues. And the person who so signatory to the account is the man. And there is no financial power of attorney, and just has an accident or develops some cardiac issues like ositas. So it becomes a big issue, and there are so many examples, and I'm drawing this out from the point of view of cultures and traditions that do not believe that either female children should be trained, or maybe adopted children also in the families. Because I think there was a recent case where a man adopted a son in the late 70s, 77 between 77 to 79, and he later started having children around the 80s. At some time later, the adopted children felt that the biological children felt that this one who was adopted, he has had enough from their father, so that he should go, and that he doesn't have anything to gain from that family. So so to speak, because financial power of attorney is not limited to a particular gender. By the man, it can be made by the woman, it just could be made by somebody who has a property. Where they want to take care of a particular situation, that cannot be done. If there is no way that the person who has access to the funds can actually dispense it in relation to the intentions of the donor. And this may not be very popular around here, where we give money to charities and all. But there are people who also have outside of their families, people they take care of, school fees they pay, people where they take, and these are how people want to plan how their finances are going to go. But in such situations, these things do not happen, because the person cannot have access to his funds at the time that he's invalidated, or to it, does not spend it in relation, does not even have a legal obligation, on the way the funds should be spent. So these are part of the scenarios where it could really touch on estate planning for a person, even while he is alive. His estate cannot be used to take care of obligations which he, on his own, took up upon himself to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So based on everything we've heard so far, we have a clear understanding now of the nature of financial power of attorney, when it's necessary, when it's needed, where it can be applied. So this leads us to the next question. This question, help us answer this question. What is the future of the power of attorney in Nigeria? Earlier you said there was no legislative framework. Martins pointed us to a general legislation, statute of general application, that provides, that touches on power of attorney. So what is the future of financial power of attorney in Nigeria? And let's compare it, place it side by side with other countries like UK, other jurisdictions generally. So tell us.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Yes, and then thanks to the other panelists, particularly Obina and Martin. Now, talking about the future of a power of attorney, financial power of attorney in Nigeria, I may dare to say that the future is in the hands of the regulators. And again, I'm delighted that Central Bank is here as a principal regulator and who is committed to ensuring improvement on the system, the institutions. Now, from what is the position now to where we think we could go, it may be prudent to look at what obtains in other jurisdictions, particularly the UK and the United States, and then see how we could adapt it to our local circumstance or situation. So we do not support a hook, line, sinker approach to imitation or copying from other jurisdictions. So for instance, in the United States, each state has its own laws. I mean, its own law providing for financial power of attorney. And the nomenclature varies. Some call it durable financial power of attorney, some call it financial power of attorney, some call it enduring financial power of attorney. So trying to distinguish it from an ordinary financial power of attorney, which does not apply based on their legislation in the event of incapacitation. Now, in UK, we find interesting because they are the process of regularizing or registering a power of attorney is generally by way of stamp duties and proof of payment of stamp duties. But in the UK, the Crown Justice, so the equivalent of our Ministry of Justice, has a power of attorney could be a financial power of attorney. They call it lasting financial power of attorney. Could be registered, is registrable with their Ministry of Justice, so the Crown Justice. And again, in the event that no power of attorney exists, there are legal framework that provides for what needs to be done. So if no financial power of attorney, or as they call it, a lasting power of attorney exists, what is required is for the affected persons to go to the courts and obtain a court order. So, and that court order becomes valid. And I think that is what Martins referred to in the innovation when he mentioned affidavit, when he referred to affidavit in the case of the public officer. Now, in the UK, is much more, perhaps we could say that it is a bit straightforward, because the guardian, the office of the guardian, I suppose, the office of the guardian, so the affected persons apply to the office of the guardian in the event that there is no financial power of attorney. And then the office of the guardian, through the court, makes an order allowing named persons to act on behalf of the person, so on behalf of the principal or the affected person. So so we think that with the help of and the commitment of the regulators, especially the central bank, we could have a much more clearer legislative framework. It could be by way of regulation. It could be by way of an enactment of a more robust a power of attorney act that provides for all this. So that it is affordable to the ordinary Nigerian, because not everyone will have the attention of the banks or the financial institutions, not just the banks and the financial institutions, to be able to assess the regulators. And not even everybody, and if that is the case, not everyone has that courage or trust to be able to approach the banks to assess such help. So we think that a clearer legislative framework could help this to be more accessible to every Nigerian. Yes, thank you. So this is what we think to be the future, and the future is not far from us. Thank you, Cynthia. Cynthia,
thank you, Cynthia, for that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Osita, for that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to throw this next question to Martin and Obinna. It's both of you, so you can help us answer this question. How does durable financial power of attorney affect or impact the banking and financial services industry in Nigeria? What's the impact of it? And what can regulators and stakeholders do to improve the current state of affairs, what we have? So Martin, okay, Martin, you go first. Just what's the impact of financial power of attorney in the banking industry, and what can regulators and to improve upon what we have on ground?
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Clearly, the absence of regulations or legislation specific to the financial sector on power of attorney has implications. Picking up from where I left, which is the fact that people, no one expects the worst to happen, but we must plan for it. And from the experiences I have seen, the delay and all, it makes it important. So what are the consequences of this absence? Some of them are dormant accounts. We have so many dormant accounts now. I had pointed out earlier that it may not just be for medical reasons, but absence from the country or being, extremely busy and other reasons could make one unable to perform functions that he would need to be in the country to do, or to do physically by him or herself. And so dormant accounts are some. There is also the issue of claimed dividends. On claimed dividends, those will be some other issues that you will find there have been attempts to manage issues of dormant accounts and then issues of unclaimed dividends. And the Pension Reform Act is still a new legislation which was enacted only in 2004, and 2014 it was reenacted. Some years down the line, it may not be out of place to also find lots of unclaimed RSAs, as a result of, issues like this, where there's an absence of a financial power of attorney in place. So the question further, if I understand it, is what could be done in the circumstance? Clearly, our discussion has underscored the need for intervention, by way of either regulation regulations or legislative intervention. To my mind, there may be need first for regulatory intervention as a stopgap, which is faster, and ultimately we get to legislation. And there will be need for the stakeholders in the financial sector to be sensitized on these issues. It is something that has been hidden in plain sight all this while, but until this conversation, I am not aware that it has been brought to the fore before. So this is a welcome discussion. There are some things that certainly will agitate the mind when we are talking about this, and some of it would be the risks that will also come with it, the possibilities it may engender for fraud and other unwanted possibilities it may hold. The medical doctors would also need to be conscientized, and when this is done, it will have to be a very robust provision, which will take into account the kind of report, the kind of medical certificates that will have to be issued, the intervention of the courts, if any. How do you register this? Where do you register it? I know Osita had mentioned in the UK, he said it was in the Ministry of Justice or something like that. In Nigeria, where do you register it would be an issue. Do you register it before the courts? I know, for example, for wills, you register at the courts. For this one, some people call it a living will. Where do you register it? The banks will also be interested in how they are not exposed to litigation as a result of honoring these. So it will definitely need a multi-stakeholder approach where all the issues are considered and dissected. Speaking for the banking sector, for other sectors, it is not so easy to transfer real property from A to B. It has a long procedure before it is ultimately concluded. But with regards to funds, which is very liquid, all it takes is just one instruction and the whole funds could move from A to B, and it could turn out to be a big issue that would lead to multiple litigations and things like that. So I welcome this wholeheartedly, and we will continue to engage to see about the possibility of how this could actually be introduced in our jurisdiction, and like Osita had said, in a way and in a manner that suits our own local milieu. Thank you. Cynthia, can you hear me? Over to you.
Yes, I can hear you, Martin. Okay, thank you, Martin. Obinas, can you share your thoughts with us? Thank you, Mr. Martins.
Okay, do you have specific questions? I think I cut off at some point. Would you want to just repeat the question? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. That would be a problem. What is the impact of, Martin was just talking about the impact financial poverty may have on the banking sector, other sectors. So can you help us throw more light on that also? And what regulators and stakeholders can do to address the issues? I don't know if you get me.
Yes, I got you. I am more or less a human rights lawyer. I come from that particular field, from that particular perspective. However, I know from the perspective of inheritance, some issues that relate to probate, that it's actually a Herculean experience for widows who are trying to claim funds of their husbands. And when I say widows, that's maybe takes it a bit further than what we are discussing here, because we are talking about more or less what happens when a person is alive. Because once the person is dead, it becomes a different ballgame. But you could see the fact that there are some women who, when they are alive, or when the husbands are alive, they are more or less like widows too, in terms of the way they have to work hard, to struggle hard, to take care of the family in a way that's probably not the fault of the husband, but the fact that cannot have access to whatever the man has as his property due to illness or some life situations. And from the perspective of what Mr. Martin said, the banks also would want to protect themselves, because we would not want a man who has been in coma for 3 years to wake up one morning and say that, and of course, he wakes up from coma and he's now well. This should now becomes what happened to the money which he kept with a deposit money bank. And that would be a big problem, because of course it's when there's that banker customer relationship comes down to the fact that if you deposit your money in a bank, nobody should have access to it except upon your own authorization, or where the states decides to freeze the account for some reasons altogether. So I believe that there is need to have a legislation on this. But the fact that you see most of the time, we as a society, as a people, I don't want to say we don't think this far, but we don't think that this far is possible, that it can happen. We don't check the possibility of such a thing happening. The possibility of a person being in the hospital and there is need to pay his hospital bills of 100,000, and he has 900,000 lying in a deposit money bank, and his wife has to.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak up a bit? I don't think we can hear you. Can you speak up a bit?
Okay. How do we do this now?
Thank you.
Okay. Is it better now? Is it better? Is it better?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. So I was saying that we don't think this far, or because of our religious belief or our culture, we don't think that something bad can happen in such a way that we will be unable to give instructions to our financial advisors or deposit money banks where we have our finances to bring out funds. So you see a man who has 100,000 naira need to be paid for in the hospital, but he has millions in an account and nobody has access to it, to be able to pay out. So I think that we must also start thinking of that, having a strong legislation, even if it says that some family members can have access to a particular percentage or to a particular limit upon the production of certified copies of hospital reports, or having the medical practitioners write that this person needs this money, or this money cannot be obtained. Because going through the route of going to the courts to get injunctions or to get rulings from the magistrate court, knowing how the court system operates in Nigeria, it's going to be difficult. You might have a man die on the hospital bed because he couldn't get access to funds to take care of him, whereas he has funds in the hospital. So I think that there may be some things the banks could do instead of having them going through the route of the courts. But if they're satisfied that these two persons are married and this person is in the hospital and there is need for money to be spent, particularly if it has to be limited to a specific amount, a specific percentage, then of course that could be done. But like Osita said, and like Martins had agreed, there is need to have a specific legislation on this particular issue, protecting the banks, if they honor such financial POAs. I think that's important, and that's long overdue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Obina. So, we're almost approaching the end of this webinar. So far, so good. We've gotten a holistic understanding of the topic of what financial poverty is all about, its functions in different sectors of our economy. So we have questions from the audience. So we're going to take the questions now. We have a couple of questions, so I'm going to read out some of these questions.
Sorry,
have
Cynthia.
already been answered.
Hello, Cynthia. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes, I noticed there is a hand raised. Okay, someone had raised a hand for a long time now. Can you do two hands are raised? Okay, one hand is raised. Is it possible to take on that person?
Okay, we'll do that.
Since not a problem, they will be allowed to speak.
Sorry?
They will be allowed to speak. So,
okay, so let's go ahead to the questions. Okay, this is a question, and this question is specifically directed to Martins. So it says, from a regulatory perspective, how can we ensure that banks and other financial institutions respect these documents when presented? I witnessed a situation where a widow went to inquire about the husband's salaries in a microfinance bank, and the husband used before his death. The bank, with all effrontery, stated that the funds left in the husband's account has been released to the husband's elder brother without any documents empowering the brother-in-law to collect those funds. That's the question. How can we ensure that banks and other financial institutions respect these documents when presented? This question is specifically addressed to Martins. Martins.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. As of today, as we had pointed out, there aren't in existence any regulations, guidelines to the banks concerning financial power of attorney. And so where a lawyer is to approach a bank with a financial power of attorney, I am sure the banks will be reluctant to honor a financial power of attorney as of today. And so it would be, for now, how we can ensure that this is done is by ultimately ensuring that there is a regulation around this or a legislation around this, the financial power of attorney. Until then, I am not sure any bank will merely rely on financial power of attorney presented by a solicitor, especially in view of the issues I had highlighted earlier, which is the possibility of fraud that could be occasioned by financial power of attorney. If there is a regulation, all the standards, all the checks will be put in place, and no bank would want to expose itself by honoring one and ultimately being made to pay for the funds it had let out. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much. Osita, please turn off your mic, mute your mic. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to other questions. Okay, please, can we get a sample of a financial power of attorney? Osita, I think you should answer that.
okay, so the person can, yeah, so we can propose a draft, again, which will be a general draft, and then share it to participants via their email. But if the person is not a lawyer, he or she should bear in mind that it is a general precedent and not may not address a specific situation. Thank you.
Yes, because a financial power of attorney is like every other the financial aspect of the business. So, okay, this other question still as well. Like we said, financial power of attorney, it's basically a power of attorney. So just the powers is streamlined towards the financial aspects of the person's career, business, whatever it is. So I think that question has been answered already. What are the features of a durable financial power of attorney? Okay, I'll take these two questions together. What are the features of a durable financial power of attorney? The second question is, can a financial power of attorney be executed in favor of a minor? Osita, you have to take the first question, the features of a durable financial power of attorney. I think you mentioned it earlier when you answered the first question. So in case the person hadn't joined us at the time, just help us answer the question, features of a durable financial power of attorney.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. So basically, the features of a financial power of attorney will be first the capacity to make. So the person has to be of sound mind. So the capacity, the competence to execute it. And then it has to clearly identify the principal and then name the agent. And it could equally include make secondary provisions in the case of incapacitation of the agent who can act. So perhaps it could name more than one agent or provide layers that if the first named agent is equally incapacitated, the second named agent acts, and perhaps even a third layer. Then you should specifically state the powers or the rights that it is given to, that he or she is giving to the agent. That has to be specific and direct as to the nature of the powers. And it has to be validly executed. And again, bearing in mind the requirements of registration, it should be stamped. Yes, thank you. I hope this addresses the question.
Yes, I believe it does. It does too. Thank you very much, Osita. Okay, this question from Gabriel Egu. Please, what are the specifics in drafting a financial power of attorney? I think Osita just answered that. Also, after drafting, is one required to go to a notary or commissioner of oaths before the financial power of attorney is valid? What else validates the financial power of attorney after drafting? Okay, so question is what validates financial power of attorney? Martins, please help us answer that question. What validates the financial power of attorney? It's basically, okay, Martins, answer that.
Okay, Cynthia, I thought you were going to jump on this, but notwithstanding, I can speak. Osita had listed these. I had made the point earlier that a financial power of attorney is a subset of power of attorney generally. And so the same rules that governs a power of attorney applies to a financial power of attorney. Now, the only reason why we are having this conversation now is the connection between or the acceptance of a financial power of attorney by the financial system, which presently the link has not been established. So it could be made, in line with all the conditions set by Osita. It could, for effect, be notarized. An affidavit could be sworn by both the principal and the agent. Stamp duties could be paid But you could still not have the banks accept this as of today, because there is no regulatory or legislative framework for its use in the country. And so you may still be stuck with it. And so in my view, what we are doing calls for advocacy and for reforms, and in our system, which will ultimately make this valid. And so to say that, oh, if all these are done will make it valid, will be speculative, because the framework for its acceptance isn't in place as of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. You hit the nail on the head. Okay. So we take 2 more questions. We're almost out of time. Can a power of attorney be executed in favor of a minor? Okay, let me take these 2 questions together because we're almost out of time. Can a financial power of attorney be executed in favor of a minor? That's one of the questions. Second question, what kind of provisions would you like to see in any regulatory framework that may be proposed by any of the legislature? Okay, Obinna, you'd help us with the first question. Can a financial power of attorney be executed in favor of a minor? Then the second question, someone else will take it. So Obinna.
In favor of a minor, I'm wondering if in a situation, does it mean that the minor will be the beneficiary of the taking care of, or the minor will be the donee? That is the person whom would actually, who will be the attorney. Because of course, a minor cannot normally be an attorney in that sense. But if the person means in favor of a minor, that a man executes a financial attorney that says this will be used to take care of my children that are 6 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, 10-year-old, the answer is yes, that can be done. But to say that a minor will be the attorney, I don't think that's accepted under Nigerian laws.
Okay, thank you very much. That's basic principles. It actually makes a lot of sense. A minor cannot be. So the second question, what kind of provisions would you like to see in any regulatory framework that may be proposed by any of the legislature? Martins, we're talking about legislative frameworks. Okay, Osita was talking about legislative frameworks, and Martins, you made mention of legislative intervention. So I don't know who to direct this question to now. Okay, Martins, help us answer.
The question again, please. Okay. What kind of provisions would the panel like to see in any regulatory framework that may be proposed by any of the legislature? For me, from the banking system, I will want to see a legislation that, as much as possible, provides or minimizes the possibility of fraud, and one that protects Nigeria's financial space and inspires consumer confidence in the financial system. So those would be the attributes I would want to see. I would also want to see one that is friendly, that addresses the concerns that were raised by Obinna with regards to human rights and the vulnerable in the society. I want to see the legislation respond not necessarily to the interests of the high and mighty, I know I have been talking about people traveling abroad or being trapped abroad and things like that, but he has brought it home to our realities here, making it to be useful and how it could help people who wouldn't have a voice. So I want the legislation in the draft of such, I want it to be one that will be useful to these kind of people. This is especially because, for example, in some of the features of the power of attorney, one of them is some of them are irrevocable if they are coupled with interest, while some of them are revocable. Some are springing, which means they only come to life when an event has occurred. So it could be that, okay, I'll write it and say, if XYZ happens to me, then, but until then, I remain the principal, I remain the donor, I continue to do my things. So if you look at that, with regards to revocation now, I'll be interested in seeing how this is couched, because revocation can happen by implication of law, of a financial power of attorney. Death can also be an instance where it will be revoked, especially the death of the agent, if a succession plan was not put in place as highlighted by Osita. Divorce can also be a revocation factor. For example, where a husband makes his wife the donee of the power of attorney. If there is a divorce or a separation, certainly it will be awkward or incongruous, unless if that is still the intention, to have the wife to continue to act as the donee. So I want to see all these fine lines to be addressed in such a legislation. But at the end of the day, I want the legislation to be something that is practical and useful for us in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was really insightful. I think we've taken all the questions. Yes, we've taken all the questions. So that brings us to the end of the question and answer session. Before we round up, we're almost at the end of this webinar, but before we round up, give the panelists like an opportunity to share their final thoughts on this topic. So I think each panelist has like 2 minutes to just give us your final thoughts, round up your thoughts on this topic. Let's know what's so we'll start with Martins. So Martins, thank you.
All right. So once again, I will want to thank SRJ Legal for putting together this webinar. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yes, Martin, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I want to thank you for putting together this webinar. It's been inciting and soul searching for me since it came to the fore. It is clear that we cannot continue to do things as we have been doing before. Life is dynamic, law is dynamic, and it must always be tuned to meet the needs of the times. And having said that, we cannot end this here. I will insist that we take this beyond this seminar, and that this should lead to be the genesis of a regulation or a legislation ultimately regulating this space. A gap has been identified that needs to be filled, And this faculty should seriously consider engaging on how best to fill this. On this note, I would want to say thank you for the privilege to have been here.
Thank you very much, Martins. So, Obinna, please kindly share your thoughts, your final thoughts with us.
Okay, thank you very much. As someone that teach human rights, particularly women and children's law in the university, I do quite a number of research, street research outside the classroom, and I see what people go through daily, particularly women and children. Not that the resource, in some cases, not that the resources are not available, but the resources are not available to them in that sense, towards taking care of their needs at that particular point. And it's so heartbreaking, considering the fact that when you even see the socioeconomic situation of the country and the health issue that we've had of late, that we know about COVID, know that nobody is safe, so to speak. As long as you are breathing, you are potentially susceptible to catching the virus. As breathing as a human being, really, if you haven't had the vaccine. So you see that some of the ideas we have had, the cover that we place behind religion and faith is something that we must also, while also keeping religion and faith, we must also be pragmatic in the way that we plan our lives and the way they should operate. Just some form of planning could help someone who needs funds in the hospital, or imagine if, in quotes, God forbid, that person is falls into the hand of kidnappers or something, and funds are needed to take care of running the security teams that will bring him out, and then nobody can actually access the funds in his account. I say, God forbid, let it not happen to anybody, But it's also the same with somebody who is in the hospital, who needs funds urgently. So, and it happens in several ways. Now, that's for the person. Now, what of his family members, his children, his wife, he would want to take care of? A woman that's worked hard with a husband should not suffer because of the fact that her husband's people refuse to release what her husband has already made available for them, whereas the man is still alive. So I think I'm hoping that we will take this further, that the advocacy and enlightenment goes on while the legislators are doing their own. We also have some level of attitudinal and behavioral change, because even if we have a legislation and people don't accept it, if people still embrace it the way they embrace will, that writing a will means I'm going to die in 2 weeks, which is a lie, we will not have things change. So we also move with behavioral change communication, whereas we also move for advocacy, for legislative advocacy. So once again, thank you, SRJ legal practitioners, for this opportunity to be here. Your webinars have always been insightful and incisive, rather, and I'm very happy to be part of it today. Thank you, Cynthia.
Right. Thank you very much, Obinna. Over to you, the final thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. So my final thought is an expression of gratitude. Yes, I do this because I can trust. I'm convinced and that I should trust, and I do trust the central bank through Martins, who I have seen, at least electronically, because of the commitment and the enthusiasm he has shown on the telephone and during the correspondence, and even here on this session. So I'm very grateful, and I can trust that central bank will take up this cause and ensure that this is implemented, because they have the competence to do it. And then again, the professionalism and the will, as shown by Martins. May I again in a very special way, thank Obinna for all his help. Obinna has constantly featured on our webinar, and we are grateful to him. And most importantly, we are grateful to, so I am grateful to my colleagues in SRJ for all their help and our commitment. But particularly, I am grateful to Kofo Salam Alada, the legal advisor, stroke director, legal services department of the Central Bank. And then again to all other persons that have helped us to ensure that this event held. We are grateful and we'll trust in their commitment and goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osita. We've come to the end of this session. It has been enlightening, it has been exciting. I know we've learned something new and we've improved on what we already knew. So I want to thank everyone for showing up. Thank you, Martins. Thank you, Obinna. Thank you, Osita. Thank you for creating time out of your busy schedules to join us. We really appreciate your showing up. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. It's really educating. And thank you to our participants, the attendees. I appreciate you for joining us. Thank you very much. So we looking forward to seeing. We hope that should we extend an invitation to you in the future, you would be willing to honor our invitation. We really good. Thank you. It was a really entertaining and exciting and educative session. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of this webinar. Thank you all for joining. Have a nice day.
Okay, so thank you, Obinna and Martin, if you're still here.
You're welcome, Buster. Thanks, Martins. Thanks, Cynthia. Good one.
Okay, goodbye.
Martins, you're on mute.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Obinna, well done.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother.
I mean, I like your approach, the women and children's rights approach. You know, you kept bringing me down from my high horse. You know, by that perspective, you know, I seem to have acquired an elitist mentality to this, but you always drill it back to reality, and I love it, you know, because as you speak, it resonates well with me.
Yeah.
It will interest you to know that during my NYSC, I actually started as a women and children's rights advocate.
Oh.
Yes, with WACOL in Port Harcourt.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Before the quest for money. Okay, so happy to hear you, and you did extremely well. I am so happy to have been part of this. I think I was more of a participant myself.
Thank you too for giving us an industry perspective.
Well, yeah. So this is it is what it is, but we would have to do something about it now. Osita, I hope it's just us.
Yes.
All right. So I think now it's for you to. There was something Obinna mentioned, which was very good. Advocacy. I think that is the first step. Advocacy before any other thing, because that is what even brings it to the consciousness of even the regulator himself. and also gives you an original, an owner kind of trademark of sorts to these ideas. So I think this is something for you to consider driving. If possible, you should look for partner agencies, organizations. I don't know if CBN will be one of such. I can't say for this, because what you are looking for now is buy-in. But I know there are many organizations, international NGOs, for example, who you working with Obinna will be able to put this in a way that they will be willing to fund advocacy on things like this.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, and then also you can together we can see how you can work with legal services to see how to make an inroad somehow into CBN. But this advocacy thing is something you should really consider. You should really consider. In fact, while it was going on, I wrote a list of the people who are attending by virtue of the contact with me or my own publication of SAME. And I have up to 15 or more people. Yes, about 15 people. So I was wondering, there are different groups on Facebook, NBA, on NBA, on LinkedIn, on Instagram too. I don't know if the banner for this was posted there as well. We could have had more attendance if it was broadcast, that loud. I guess you can't hear me.
No, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
I heard you, Martins.
Okay.
I think the issue is getting the understanding, people to understand, breaking down the message to people knowing how it personally affects them.
Yeah.
Because when we see financial power factor, somebody just looks at it and say, this is for lawyers. He moves on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But if we have a background message that says that this actually is the reason why you have this problem you're having, or you are 1 meter away from having this problem because irrespective of how much fund your father has, if your father has a problem of taking care of you, you are dropping out of school immediately. So this is something you need to go discuss with your father and ask him, do we need to make this and keep it here, so that if this this your repeated visit to the hospital now comes down to the fact that you can no longer leave the hospital, that I can still continue with school, we can still pay workers, factory can still continue. If the message is broken down in that form, there will be a lot of buy-in and somebody can understand it. But if we put it in the form of power attorney, somebody looks at it and said, okay, no, and he just walks away, that he doesn't consign him or her. So hopefully in further messages that SRJ Legal will put it out, we will bring it down to the way that people identify with it. That this can happen to a high and mighty person or can happen to a low person. Hopefully with that, we can get people interested in the message, this message.
I agree. Well,
okay.
Osita.
Yes, Martin. Okay, so I deeply appreciate this.
Feedback.
Am I interrupting? Okay.
No, go ahead.
So okay, thank you. So I deeply appreciate this mutual interaction, because it's really be terrible if we allow this to linger on the shelf. So advocacy is key, and perhaps we can find ways to break down the message first on social media, and then begin to think of a clearer strategy as to how to get other civil societies, and then so perhaps interest-based NGOs then NGOs fight, and this webinar comes in very handy. So then NGOs championing the cause of women and children who really suffer more from this in this regard. So we find ways to get their buy-in, and then again, so even only human resource from central bank is enough. Human resource is enough. So we'll find ways around it, and then see how we can more clearly promote this, and then eventually see if the central bank, if it is within their competence, again have a regulation
around it
at the first instance, or maybe again look towards sponsoring. I mean, so with the collaboration of all the stakeholders, look towards sponsoring a bill. So the bills take time. So if the CBN Act allows for a regulation is much more effective. So we are going to do this. We again try to speak to those, perhaps the bankers, Chartered Institute of Bankers.
Absolutely.
Perhaps it may be something they are interested in. Even the financial, the insurance associations, try to see how to engage them. Yes, this is what we think. I think on the spot.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You know, I'm looking at the list of people that attended, those that I know, and I can see 2 medical doctors were in attendance.
Okay, from your office?
No, not my office. From out there.
Okay,
and that's good. I can also see some bank executives, and the first
really
the immediate first vice chairman of the NBA.
Caleb the immediate past vice chairman of the NBA.
Yes, president of
that's
the NBA
interesting.
was in attendance. Yes, Caleb Dajan. He was in attendance throughout.
Caleb Dajan.
Dajan, D-A-J-A-N.
Okay, D-A-J-A-N. Okay.
Yes.
I think we'll try and reach him.
Yes, please. Caleb Dajan. So you can leverage on him to push this to the NBA. You know, you can leverage him to push this to the NBA. This could be something for discussion at a session of the NBA conference.
Yeah.
Leveraging him.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I can supply his contacts to you on request.
Okay. Okay, that would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah. So, Martins, I'm deeply grateful. I mean, your commitment to this has been overwhelming.
Well, I love what it is all about. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. That's all I can say. I am particularly excited about Obinna and the angle he has brought to the whole thing. So Obinna, if you are still here, know that
yes,
me and you, we are hooked. You can't escape.
All right. Okay, there's no problem. All right. Probably I'll get your email from Oster and pop you an email after now.
Yes. We should take it up from here.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, so Martins, thank you. I saw someone that shares your surname. Is your family? I think Betty.
Really? Oh,
yes.
That's my wife.
You've
been doing some digging.
No. No, I just thought as much, really. Yes, that's good. I mean, it's lovely to see her here.
So you have gone and reviewed my profile on Facebook. I know the one on LinkedIn. It's a given that you have gone there. You have seen my post already.
Of course. Yes, of course, I have. Even though I think I followed you on Twitter, but I noticed you're not very active.
Yes, lately I am more drawn to LinkedIn. It's more professional to me than that, and I have certainly No, not suddenly. I have this love now for innovation, law, and technology. So you will find
Okay.
that most of what I've been posting have been on that. As at
Yes.
yesterday, for example, Obina, this should interest you. I was reading a paper posted on LinkedIn by one professor in Calgary on how algorithm, you know, and artificial intelligence, aids racism in Canada.
Oh, it's racism in Canada.
So those, yep. So you can see now, Obina, this is clearly the intersection between human rights and technology.
Yeah, it's true. Sure. Yeah. Do you have a copy?
Yes.
Did you download it?
Let's just connect. I can hook you up on anything,
Okay.
So
All right.
we move.
All right. This is an area. This is an untapped area within our clients. How technology and innovation can actually be a disincentive to inclusion and equality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Osa,
We
thank you.
have to end this.
Nice meeting you. Of course.
All right.
Sure.
The pleasure
Yes,
is
we have
mine.
to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Bye.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay. Goodbye.
Please, regards to Cynthia as well.
Okay.
She did an excellent job, please.
Yeah, she did. Regards to her.